California. It is January 11th. Thank you for being here today. Our guest today is Anton Sherbin. He is from Ukraine. He's a filmmaker, and we'll get into his film in a little bit, but I wanted to start out by asking you some questions about Ukraine. Mm-hmm. If I was to, well, I actually did Google Ukraine. One of the first things that came up was Ukraine in Europe is known as the breadbasket. It's known as the breadbasket because the soil is naturally rich in organic matter, and it lends itself to conditions for high crop production in wheat and cereals. And it plays a critical, and I didn't know this, but it plays a critical role in the food supply for the world. So that was interesting to know. But you are Ukrainian. You grew up in Ukraine. What was it like for you growing up in Ukraine as a kid?
So I would say, so I grew up in Ukraine and Canada. I moved to Canada when I was pretty young, like 7. And so I was only in Ukraine for, before that I was in the United States for a tiny bit as my dad was doing his MBA. So I didn't spend that much time in Ukraine, but it's almost a kind of faint memory at this point. But I guess it, changes your perspective on the world a little bit. I think Ukraine is a rougher place than a lot of what we're, used to in the West. Honestly, when you ask me thinking about Ukraine, I just feel a lot of sadness remembering it. It's a sad sort of country in many ways.
It sets the foundation, even your early memories when you were 6, 7 years old, about how you view life later on. It's establishing that foundation for you. You still have family there. You still have members of your family, extended family. In fact, I think you told me that you have a cousin who is fighting in the war currently. How long has he been fighting in the war with Russia?
Yeah, I don't. Sorry, I don't know the exact amount of time, but yeah, I do. I have family members over there. I know people who are in the Ukrainian armed forces. I know people that live in Ukraine, mostly in Kiev, and it's I do view myself as westernized enough where you don't think about someone that just kind of being in a war usually, or like a family member being attacked, or or missiles dropping. But when the war started, we were all very shocked by it, and it was kind of a devastating moment. At this point, we're more desensitized to it, I guess. But I can tell you somewhat of a exciting, almost miraculous story about someone I know, one of my close relatives in the war. So one person I know who was in the war was a young man who's avoiding the draft, right? And because Ukraine has a draft going, but so he's hiding somewhere. He's living in an apartment, and he's trying to kind of navigate his life given the war. But then his dad dies, not from the war, but just from age and health and so on. So because the dad dies, everyone has to get together for the funeral, and they go to the funeral and all this stuff, and it's this typical tragedy event. Meanwhile, as he goes to the funeral, a Russian missile hits his house on the day that he went to the funeral. So the dad dying saved his life.
Saved his life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting story. Speaking about the war, most people think, well, this war has been going on for about 4 years, but as you know, it's been going on longer than that. It started about 14 years ago under the Obama administration when Putin came in and took over Crimea. How do you see this playing out? It almost looks like everybody knows what's going on except the Russian citizens, who are basically being told that the aggressor is Ukraine. Putin wants to keep this thing going. Everybody else wants to have it come to a conclusion, including Ukraine, United States, Europe. How do you think this is going to play out? Putin, I think, is like 75, 76, 77 years old. He can't live forever. But the Russian people don't really know what's going on because Putin won't let them know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complicated set of questions. The war has actually been going on today, as of today, as long as the Great Patriotic War, which is something that if you follow Ukrainian socials and so on, everybody's been posting about this. And the Great Patriotic War, for those who don't know, is the war that Russia had with Germany in World War II. It started in June 22nd in 1941 and ended on May 9th. It was about 1,400 days, and we just crossed that line today, which is kind of funny.
So some 85 years it's been going on, 86 years.
What do you mean?
The conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
No. I'm saying I'm saying the conflict between Russia and Ukraine has elapsed the time that the conflict with Russia and Germany took place in World War II, which
I see
is
what you're saying. Okay.
the bloodiest event in the 20th century European warfare, right? And I honestly, we don't really see any end in sight. That's my opinion. I think it's going to drag on and on for various reasons. There's a lot of, I think, both ideological and geopolitical and just reasons of the mind, I guess, that this thing can't just be resolved, even though people want it to be. And I think
Ukraine's not going to surrender. You know that much, right?
I don't think so, no.
I don't think so either. And what would stop Putin, in my opinion, there's two things. One would be his death, and the other would be a collapse of his economy, and the people finally just saying, we had enough of this. And that's how I see it, but I think you're right. I think he has the will to continue moving on with the war, but I think he does want to engage. He does want to engage with the United States. He wants to engage with Western Europe so that he makes it look like he's interested. Meanwhile, he's got 500 drones going over Kyiv or other populated areas, and he's killing civilians.
Yeah, I mean, I think God knows what he wants. I think he at the very least wants to stay in power. There's a lot of people who speculate that he needs to bring a win, or like Russia needs to show that the war was victorious, or Putin needs to bring back some sort of win to justify staying in power, because if the war is a failure, he will simply be removed. I think that's probably one of the major reasons. Some people say that the war itself is necessary for Russia's survival. I don't really see that being the case. I don't see how, if Russia ended the war now with the battlefront where it is, I don't think Russia as a nation would be deeply affected or change. It's not going to destabilize Russia to not succeed. I think.
More important for his survival, for Putin's survival?
Oh, for him, it's definitely more. For him, it's more important. But for the nation, I don't think it's. Yeah,
and you see countries offering him off-ramps so that he can politely or genuinely get off and make it look like he's still a winner. And that's somewhat of the strategy that's been, talked about in this country as well as Western countries as well. I want to get to your movie now. Your movie, Century 21. Let's talk about your movie, and we'll have links that people can go to and get access to the movie and see it for themselves. What motivated you to make this movie?
We should say what the movie's about a little bit.
Tell us a little bit about the movie, and then tell us what motivated you to make this movie.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your movie. So Century 21 is about a, reclusive internet addict. It's about a guy who, I always pitch it as is addicted to the internet, is addicted to internet politics, internet arguments. Specifically in internet arguments that you have in Twitter's comment sections, threads, that sort of thing. And that is something that, everyone relates to, but most people at least don't admit that they do that, or most people I talk to don't seem to do that, or have experience, getting caught up in arguments themselves, but they're aware they exist. The reason I made it, it's to kind of explore the tragedy, I guess, of that type of alienated, stuck, kind of fixated, person. And I'm trying to find the words, but it's a personal story for me in many ways, and I think it is something that's more pervasive in the 21st century, and we have to kind of deal with it as a society. But there is a kind of tendency to not relate to it. Like it's very strange because a lot of people acknowledge the film as like a real thing, but don't relate to it. And I don't have a crazy explanation for why that is the case.
That answers my next question. Why? What did you learn from making this movie about yourself and others? What you just told me about others, they don't want to relate to this. Maybe perhaps they see a side of this that's true and they don't want to stand up and look at themselves in this way and understand, well, this is problematic in my life and I have control. I don't have to engage so much, and maybe this is not a healthy thing for me. Mm-hmm. But what did you learn about yourself in making this movie?
Yeah, I guess about myself, I'm trying to think about what I didn't learn about myself. I guess it was a very interesting prism for me to view my own past with internet discourse, and I want to say it holds up a mirror, like you said, to your own perhaps toxic internet tendencies. Although I would say that I had already done that by the time I started writing the film. So, to say that I learned something about myself, by the time the film was being made, that lesson had already been learned. So making the film was more a lesson about others, I think, than it was about anything that I went through with, my younger internet debate days or so forth.
In making this film, were there any surprises that came along the way in making this film? What surprised you?
Like in terms of content, in terms of production?
Anything that you didn't expect along the way in this journey.
Yeah. I guess, I want to go back to my other point of just I guess I didn't expect I should have expected. So it's very hard for me to describe the response to the film in one word. In what I think that I'm proud of the film. I think the film is extremely accurate, and it shows something that honestly ought to be viewed as important. But there is a tendency for some people to try to kind of keep themselves at arm's length from the content. And I've noticed that, the film has been out for a few months, and I'm noticing that more and more from certain, cohorts of people. And I shouldn't have been surprised by that. I guess I had hopes that probably wouldn't happen. The kind of authenticity would carry the message. But I do think that I do think that that's one of the surprises.
Let's get to the message. What in this process of getting this film made, there's an underlining message that you have that you want to present to your audience. And as you're making this film, did that message change along the way, or is it just something that just evolved and developed over a period of time in the movie, or did you have that message made in your mind and it just put it on paper and let's get it going and get it made? How did that formulate to you? What are the things, in other words, what is the message and what do you want your audience to think about?
Yeah, I think the message primarily is, there's at least two things. Number one, there's a tendency to disregard or kind of dismiss, or like I said, hold at arm's length this type of character who is, the alienated internet addict who just is obsessed with arguments, and that's his life. And I think, for one, the message is that actually matters on some level, and isn't just a joke. That number one. But number two, there's a broader, I guess, theme that's the lesser message, the secondary message about the 21st century, which is that the 21st century is unique historically and culturally and socially. It's the first time in history that the kind of weird, almost peculiar socialization norms that exist on the internet are prevalent. And we have, my generation, we've been raised in them, and we think that they're normal. So we haven't really deconstructed them or taken a step back to think, like, everybody critiques the internet and says, oh, internet addiction, yada, yada. But we haven't fully, I think, exited the norms to think outside of them. But no other generation of people thinks about the world the way that 21st century, like millennials and Gen Z do, simply because the internet has shaped information and ideas and moral concepts in a very specific way. So we're getting into that, but it's secondary because the film isn't really diving into that idea full scale.
So when I saw your movie, the two things that jumped out at me, and that was one of them, is this idea of normalized relationships that people have on their computer or on their device, and it's normal. It's a very normal way of communicating and developing relationships with people, and it's acceptable. So that is that. There's always in life risk and rewards. And that's the reward. You can have these easy, dependable, convenient relationships anytime, right, with people.
Yeah.
The risk is, well, what is the consequence of that happening? And I thought the way your film, I don't want to get too much into your film and spoil it for people that haven't seen it yet, but I thought the other message that and we haven't touched on it yet, is this idea of loneliness, this idea of just being isolated, that you could have these wonderful, incredible reaches across the world and create friendships with people in London and Russia and China and Thailand and Vietnam and all over the world. But then all of a sudden that world could collapse on you and you have nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, because it's illusory in many ways. Like the access, the ease with which you have access is the illusion, because the ease with which you have access is also the ease with which it can be taken away. So the access to people and information through the internet is not actually a replacement for genuine, I guess, real life experiences of friendship and non-loneliness. It is uniquely alienating because it swarms you with these illusions. One of the things I thought about as the film was kind of coming out was, like, if you pay attention, the character Naxton, right? He's socializing, but he's socializing in internet spaces that are 100% anonymized, like Twitter and YouTube. Like, you don't see him chatting with people on Instagram or Facebook or any of the more social medias. And the reason for this is because in order to have, so we critique those as social media addiction, yada yada. But even those social medias require you to actually meet people in real life, because to get Instagram friends, you need to meet those people in real life and say hello to them and get acquainted with them. You need to actually participate in some sort of community, right? Naxton isn't on those spaces because he doesn't participate in any community. The communities he's in are completely anonymized, or it's in these Discord servers where, he hears a guy's voice, but if the guy disconnects and blocks him, it's over. It's the most all those relationships hang on a thread.
They hang on a thread, and I think you're bringing up a really good point, because establishing relationships, real relationships, meaningful relationships, where the people and you can actually be with one another and touch one another, that takes effort.
Oh, yeah.
It takes effort, and it takes willingness. It takes confidence in many respects. And I think that's what the character that in the film was showing to me, was there was this lack of confidence to engage in real life.
Yeah.
And what you said earlier, I want to go back and pivot back to what you said earlier, because one of the things that people, when they see this movie, got to really ask themselves the question, I'm not that person because I'm in denial of being that person.
Yeah.
And that's not what this movie is trying to, make anybody feel guilty of. We're just trying to make people aware this is a trap.
Yeah.
Don't fall into this trap,
exactly.
because this trap is deadly.
Yeah, no, I think you summarized it pretty well. It's a trap, and it's also a tragedy, and it matters. And I think, like, going back to the generational thing, I think you're gonna have older generation people. A lot of them are not necessarily going to understand if there's a blind spot. It's because this isn't their world. They didn't grow up like this. They're, whether they're from Ukraine or wherever, their understanding of relationships is so very different. They don't have this experience of being only plugged in and socializing through these strictly digital channels. And the people who did grow up in that don't realize that it's peculiar, that these norms are peculiar, but they're historically unprecedented, and they're different. They think it's normal, but it's actually the least normal thing that's ever existed. So you have these two kind of blind spots that I think explain some of the distancing from the film's message. Yeah.
So I want to thank you for being here today. I wanted to ask you, however, do you have any plans for any future projects? Your next film? Do you have any thoughts or ideas about what that might look like?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple films. Some people did ask if a continuation to Century 21. What Century 21 didn't have time to get into is, okay, let's say that you are like this alienated internet addict. That's your world. That's how you socialize. And you've done that all, for a long time in your life. How do you start to get out of it? The next sort of phase. So that the next phase of, crawling out of the internet world and trying to, fix your loneliness is probably, that's an idea that I've thought about working on. Another idea, and I'm glad you asked me about Ukraine, is more geared towards, stuff that's related to the Soviet Ukrainian world. Gulag Archipelago is a book that I'm a big fan of, that I kind of want to, there's scenes in that book that I think would be very interesting to film, that I want to adapt. And I think most of all, I'm attracted to films that have a message. I don't know how to just make a movie that doesn't have a very clear, important sounding message. If it's not trying to have an important sounding message, I don't see myself being that invested in making it.
Okay, so people that want to get a hold of you, how can they reach out to you? What platforms can they reach you at?
Oh, okay. I was going to link these below, but yeah, you have Theoretical Art Productions, which is my YouTube channel where you can watch Century 21 free of charge. It's 20 minutes long. There's my second channel, which is Theoretical Artist, capital letters, no space in between, which is more of just a kind of an art discussion philosophy channel. And you have all of my socials, my Twitter and Instagram and stuff that I'm sure will supply in the description and so on. Okay, really good. I'm glad you were here tonight, and thank you for being here. We look forward to seeing your next project and finding out more about how our culture interacts
with technology moving forward in Century 21, because I think it's a really important idea that we need to grasp and get a hold of in light of what's going on with AI and how people are putting so much faith and so much trust in technology and not a lot of thinking about consequences in terms of relationships, because after all, there's nothing more important in my opinion than relationships. That's how I wanted to begin with Ukraine and talk to you a little bit about what it was like growing up in that country and how that shaped and formed your way of thinking. But it's a process, like you were saying. You go along and you meet people and you have relationships with family. I love the story that you told about the family member that came to his dad's funeral and was saved.
I didn't say he's a family member. It's someone
that you knew.
Yeah,
somebody that you knew. Nevertheless, I want to thank you for being here. We look forward to reaching out to you again in the future. Please let us know about the next film that you make, and wish you all the success in the world.
Yeah. Thanks.